In this review, I'm going to take a look at 8BitDo's N64 Bluetooth controller mod kit that converts an original N64 controller into a wireless Bluetooth pad for your Switch. I'm going to talk about the Hall Effect joystick replacement too, and let you know whether it's a suitable mod for a controller you plan on using with the Nintendo 64. I'll also summarize the installation process for both of these mods, give you an idea of how easy they are, and provide a few comparisons between the original hardware. Okay, so first off, the wireless mod kit is a DIY kit that requires a genuine and original N64 controller. This mod replaces the entire board, so I'd recommend cannibalizing a faulty controller. You'll need to keep the D-pad and all the buttons, including the soft pad inserts, to complete the mod though, as this kit only contains the new board. Luckily, I had a couple of controllers in my collection with dodgy sticks and one with a busted cable, so I've converted this atomic purple one into a wireless switch pad with a new stick, and with this blue one I've simply replaced the stick to use with original hardware. The wireless kit will set you back $30 US or just over $40 Australian, or $40 US and just under $60 Australian if you get the kit that comes with the Hall Effect stick. Individual sticks can be bought for $20 US or $30 Australian each, so there is a discount when buying the stick with the wireless kit. Both the wireless kit and the Hall Effect stick come with the tool necessary to do the modification, which is a nice touch. Although it would be nice if there was a no tool option during the ordering process, because I already have a ton of these. Compatibility with the wireless kit is fairly limited. Officially, it'll work with the Switch and Android devices, although if you have a Bluetooth dongle like the N64 Blue Retro, you can use it with an original N64. I've heard that the performance is kind of laggy through adapters like this, but I haven't tried it myself, so consider this secondhand knowledge. Hopefully 8BitDo have plans to release their own solution, seeing as they just announced something similar for the PS1 and PS2. Now, the best part about both of these mods is that you don't need to solder anything, and in terms of difficulty, I'd say that the stick replacement is about as easy as it gets, and the wireless kit is only slightly more complicated. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of each mod to give you an idea of what's involved. For both mods, you'll need to unscrew all the screws on the underside of the controller to open it up. Then there are just 3 more screws that hold the stick in place. You'll need to unplug the stick from the board. It should just pull out with a bit of force. Even if you're not replacing the stick, you'll still need to remove it to get at the board underneath. If you're just replacing the stick, simply screw in the Hall Effect stick and plug it into the board, making sure that the plug is facing the right way up, as it only goes in the one way. Then fit the Z button part of the board with the soft pad onto the slot on the stick, and then screw the shell back together. All up, replacing the stick should take you about 10 minutes. If you're doing the wireless mod, once you've unscrewed the stick, take the original board out and leave everything else in place, so the buttons, the D-pad and the soft pads. Then place in the new wireless board, making sure to add the little plug thingy that covers the hole left by the cable. Then screw in the new stick into place, or the original stick if you're not replacing it, then reattach the Z button part of the board and do the same with the shoulder buttons. You'll need to bend the cables for the shoulder buttons to make them fit into place, and this is probably the trickiest part of the mod. These cables are quite stiff, so to make this step easier, keep the original board handy so that you can duplicate how these cables are bent. Then you just have to put the back of the shell on and screw it together. If you find that the case doesn't want to go back together easily or it feels really tight, just double check that you haven't got a cable pinching or rubbing up against part of the case, because you could damage it if you force it. And that's it, it's ready to go. This took me about 25 minutes in total. Alright, so how well do these mods work in practice? Let's discuss the wireless mod first. As I said before, this doesn't work with the original hardware without an additional Bluetooth adapter, which 8BitDo currently doesn't sell. So if you want to use it with the N64, you'll need to look into other third-party adapters. For this review, I've focused on its performance with the Switch alone. Now, a couple of things to note here. Firstly, the transmitter is contained in the rumble pack, so you need to have it inserted at all times. Thankfully, it's much smaller and lighter than the OEM rumble pack. Also, a bit of a downside is that the rumble feature only works with Switch Online and N64 games, and even then, not all games support rumble. Now, before we get into usage, here's a quick spec roundup. Battery life is up to 8 hours, and the battery is charged via the rumble pack using USB-C. Charge time is about 2 hours, and you can use it and charge it at the same time. You can also use it with a USB-C cable in wired mode with a PC. I didn't do a huge amount of testing in terms of how long it holds this charge for, but in my testing it did happily hold a charge for at least 2 weeks. The wireless range, I'm guessing, is about 10 meters. 8BitDo doesn't have this listed anywhere, so this is just based on similar Bluetooth controllers that I own and my own testing. The weight of the transmitter/rumble pack is under 50 grams, which compared to an OEM rumble pack is significantly lighter. And on the rumble receiver, you have a bunch of additional buttons to use with the Switch. The arrangement is fairly similar to the official N64 controller's layout, just lower down. Alright, let's discuss what these mods are like to use. I'm going to talk about the Hall Effect stick first because it relates to both mods. So right off the bat, this doesn't feel like a genuine stick, not even close, and if you're looking for a stick replacement that feels authentic, this definitely isn't for you. It feels much smoother than the original, and because the height is shorter, it has less travel distance, which makes more precise adjustments harder. For games like GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and Mario 64, it initially takes some getting used to, and you could make a solid argument that it's not as good as an original stick. For racing games though, I think it's superior. For Mario Kart in particular, pulling off power slides is much easier because your thumb doesn't have to work as hard. You still don't have as much control over smaller inputs, but I think that's less important here. So there's a bit of a trade-off. For some games it allows you to react faster, and I think this is better, and then for other games the lack of precision is clearly an issue. It's pretty hard to find decent replacement parts for original controllers, so while this isn't the cheapest solution, it's significantly better than the cheaper alternatives and much cheaper than those sexy steel sticks. Overall, while this isn't a perfect one-to-one replacement, it is a viable option that's reasonably priced. If you simply need to replace a broken stick, you can certainly do a lot worse. Okay, now let's talk about the wireless mod. Pairing it with the Switch is as easy as connecting a genuine controller, and for the most part it works flawlessly with every game that I tried. Now, just like the official N64 pad, this is intended to be used with N64 games, but you can of course use it to play other games too. Compatibility with non-N64 games is a bit hit and miss though. For example, it doesn't recognize the C down button as X in Outrun, which is a pretty big deal because this is the button you need to start the game. Running the controller through a tester picks up input, so I know it's not a faulty button. And I don't have this problem with other third-party controllers like the Retro Fighters Brawler 64 Bluetooth NSO. You can't remap buttons either, so I'm going to have to say that compatibility isn't rock solid, and that might be a deal breaker if you want to use it for more than Switch Online games. Otherwise, it's a pretty impressive controller in terms of performance. Latency seems to be on par with official pads, and it really does feel like using a genuine N64 controller, because you are. Obviously, adding the Hall Effect stick will result in a less authentic experience, although depending on the types of games you play, you might prefer how this feels. The bottom line is that if you want a proper N64 controller experience on the Switch, this delivers exactly that. Ultimately, I think the wireless kit is a pretty good effort by 8BitDo. If you have a faulty original N64 controller lying around, this makes for a great alternative to the official pad for the Switch. Not only does it bypass the need to have a Nintendo Online account to purchase, but it's competitively priced too. Even with the Hall Effect stick included, this mod comes in at about $10 US cheaper. It would be nice if 8BitDo sold an adapter to work with the original N64 hardware, like they do with some of their other controller kits. As it stands though, if you just want to play N64 games on the Switch, then for sure, this is an authentic and reasonably cost-effective way to do that. Now, the Hall Effect stick isn't the greatest thing to happen to the N64 controller. Having said that, for some games I actually prefer it. Also, if you just want to replace a bunged stick on a faulty controller, this isn't a bad option. Both kits are easy enough to install for the average person, and overall I give them a thumbs up.